Hello everyone. How have you? So I'll start for a little bit of intro. So I'll just read to this camera. Hi everyone. Welcome to join the Frontiers Conference, December 6, 2020. Ben Shu, Transcultural Healing Through the Elements. The Frontiers Conference is an ongoing series of performances, poetry readings, and workshops organized by Wen-You Cai, currently in residency at Special. Wen-You Cai was founded in 2017 as a way to explore the presence of primitive / ancient / Asian culture and experiences in the Western world. This process often involves critical use of technology. For example, previous event, Frontiers Conference, Carousel, was a photographic journey led by Wen-You Cai, who's here today, through the virtual background function on Zoom. And also Tie Me Up cam shows, which Banyi was co-curated. It was a series of live stream performance investigating online Asian subcultures such as mukbang and shibari. So within those performance, poets, musicians, and visual artists push at the frontiers of emotions and knowledge. Every Frontiers Conference is a search for inevitable aspects of human cognitions, emotions through the process of collaboration. So a process requiring mutual response, adaptation, stimulation, and compromise. So I really wanted to end this extremely difficult year by expanding on the conversations about healing we have been discussing together as with this group, and exploring a subject we all have a deep interest in, which is Chinese medicine traditions, their poetics, and the practical applications for the physical and emotional pain we have been going through. So today we're creating a healing space together with, I'll pass the camera to Banyi to introduce everybody.
Hi, I'm Banyi. I'm a writer, curator, and designer. I'm currently also working as a project assistant here at Special. But more importantly, I'm here as a participant, a witness, and kind of subjecting my body and soul to this collective healing process. So very excited, and just gonna briefly introduce the rest of our participants. And so we're currently kind of like seated in a way that maps out the 5 elements and its corresponding seasons, and you can kind of identify us through our colors, which are related to the 5 elements. And so we're gonna so next so should we turn the camera or
yeah? So it'll be Donna first or Jess.
Well, let's do it with Jess. Let's go with Jess. We're gonna go with like the seasons. So this is so Jess T is a tattoo artist, illustrator, Taoist practitioner, and student of Chinese medicine, who was born into a Taiwanese-Japanese family in the United States. And so their element is water, so the color black, and also representing winter. Okay. So as you could see, I'm kind of green. So this is like for the season spring, and representing wood. And so next up we have Wen-You Cai. Wen-You Cai is the founder and director of Special. She is a reluctant artist who doesn't like to exercise. So she sometimes combines the 2 tasks to feel a sense of physical and spiritual accomplishment. And so she is, this is fire, right? Fire for representing summer. And she's wearing red.
But also a little bit confused.
Also a little
So it was like other colors.
A little bit of wood, a little bit of other elements.
Right.
I think we all have that, right?
Right.
So
So next up we have Donna Mah, who is an acupuncturist, educator of Chinese medicine. She was also a guest curator to the Museum of Chinese in America's exhibition, Chinese Medicine in America, Converging Ideas, People and Practices in 2018. So she is earth, wearing like earthly yellow tones, yellow, and representing summer. Wait, not this.
No, Earth is kind of a it's
it's
kind of
transitional.
it doesn't have this necessarily just a seasonal association, but definitely the phase of transformation.
Transformation, right? Like
Transmutation.
yes, tying us together. And then finally we have Lu Zhang, who is an artist and founder of Baldwin Club. Lu's work tries to create intimate experiences from one's own social and cultural complexities. And so she's wearing gray, representing metal, like hence autumn, fall.
And coordinating mask.
yeah, it's my gray mask. So here we turn into Wen-You.
So today's conference, Ben Shu, draws inspiration from root tubers, which is featured in the current exhibition at Special, as you can see behind us. The exhibition by Ben Langford, and these are tubers. And it's a special edition of 200, as well as a larger version for 100. This is for 100, an edition of 100, and these are felt planters where you can replant any plants you may have in your home or buy a new plant for that you would like to give some metaphorical nutrients. And these large hyper-real sculptures in the background are also going to be our backdrop mascots today to help harness the energy of this traditional Chinese medicine workshop that we will be doing. That will also be a conceptual performance. And so you're combining the characters from root, which is the Chinese character Ben, and practice,
Right.
which is Su, Ben Su, the seek to find the root causes of all the areas in our lives that require healing in this difficult time in our lives this year, as well as in general for psychological purposes and also physical well-being. And today we will cover 3 parts. We will start with reading about Zuyou Su, a text by Philip S. Cho, Healing and Ritual Imagination in Chinese Medicine, the multiple interpretations of Zuyou, followed by a workshop and demonstration led by Jess and Donna on breathing, qigong, and acupressure points and interpretations of Zuyou incantations through calligraphy drawings. Then we'll open up to a discussion and questions amongst ourselves and also with you, people who are watching from home. And we encourage everybody to follow our movements as we perform them in the space.
Okay, so I'll start the reading. We'll go in orders to give everyone a little bit of context of what Zuyou is and why we're bringing into today's exercise and practice together. Mine is more of a general idea and the background of what Zuyou is about. So I'll start with it. In a Chinese medical corpus, ritual healing largely fell under the rubric of Zuyou to uncover and expel the unknown, imperceptible, and occult causes of illness, often deal with uncertain and incurable cases rising medical elite after the Northern Song. Zuyou was a branch of medicine to flexibly incorporate critique and variety of ritual therapies into orthodox practice. Zuyou employed prayer, incantations, talismans, gestures, and drugs in a nuanced clinical encounter to reveal the hidden root of disorder, ranging from the blockage of qi, spirit possessions, emotional imbalance, or loss of virtue. The development of Zhuyu also reflected the changing role of ritual in the history of Chinese medicine and the exchange among physicians, Taoist priests, and other ritual healers. The significance of ritual in Chinese medical history has largely remained unclear, as most editions of medical classics were published since the early 20th century. Exercise relevant chapters and Zhuyu manuscripts until recently were cataloged. Historians of Chinese medicine and religion have sought to decode how healing rituals conveyed hidden symbolic meanings or structured social interactions to produce efficacy. Rather than searching for definitions etched in stone, scholars have increasingly turned towards ritual as context for generating meanings through imaginative play. Zhuyu rituals and symbols created a virtual space in which educated physicians, priests, ritual masters, patients, and their families could engage with one another. At the heart of Zhuyu tradition were healing rituals to pray and manipulate imperceptible or occult causes of illness. So this is the intro for the Zhuyu from me, and I'll turn to Donna.
Hi, just a little background perhaps before I actually read what I selected. This is the verse that I'm choosing is an excerpt from the Huangdi Nei Jing. My Chinese pronunciation is terrible because Mandarin was not my first dialect of Chinese. But the text is actually one of the oldest classic references of medical literature. It's referred to as a jing, which is a classic, which has the weight of something that is of high renown. Interestingly, Huangdi is a mythological king, and it is interesting for us in the modern age to consider the attribution, of something that is so serious to something of mythology, because in the modern age, we can sort of think mythology has no value or no worth. But in fact, for the ancient people, I suppose actually attributing a textbook to the mythological king is actually a manner of elevation, right? Because of the place that these characters really sat within the psyche and the reality of ancient peoples. It was an elevation. Not written even by any one person, but really a compilation of probably the medical wisdom up until that point. The earliest texts are I think we source from the Han Dynasty or around 300 CE. So it makes it about 2,000 years old, but has a history beyond that. And why I love this passage or the nature of these parts of the Huangdi Nei Jing, it's because it's got the emperor, the yellow emperor Huangdi, asking question in dialogue, in conversation with the court physician, Qibo. And in this verse, this is the question, the Q&A. The yellow emperor said, "I have heard that in ancient times, curing illness only required moving the vital essence and transforming the qi to exercise the cause of illness. Now, to cure sickness, physicians use drugs and medicine to treat the interior and use acupuncture and minerals to treat the exterior. Why are some patients cured and others not?" Qibo replied, "In ancient times, people lived among the animals, exercising to avoid the cold and living in secluded places to avoid the heat. Inwardly, they were not troubled by envy or desire. Outwardly, they appeared unperturbed. In such a serene world, pathogens could not penetrate far into the body. Hence, people did not use drugs or medicine to cure the interior, nor did they use acupuncture and minerals to cure the exterior. Hence, all they needed to do was to move the vital essence and expel the cause of illness. However, contemporary society is not like this. Imagine contemporary society 2,000 years ago, right? So, really, it's boggling to the mind. Anyway, sorry. Okay, however, contemporary society is not like this. Worry and anxiety hurt the interior, and external hardships damage the exterior of the body. Moreover, people's lives are in such disarray that they no longer follow the 4 seasons and go against what is suitable for summer and winter. Hence, malignant winds and depleting pathogens come morning and night and harm the 5 visceral systems, bone and marrow of the interior, and the bodily orifices and flesh of the exterior. As a result, minor illnesses become more severe, and severe illnesses result in death. Hence, even expelling the cause of illness cannot stop it.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, so
I will be reading an excerpt from Jingnan's Physicians Reinterpret the Art, Hidden Emotions and Lost Virtue. I will start, so according to the late 16th and early 17th century physician, Lu Zhang, in recent times, people consider magic as zuyo, which is one of the 13 medical arts. The inner canon says, those who believe in magic and not medicine cannot be cured. How can magic be a medical art to save people whose hearts are full of pain, dare to inform and enlighten those who come to you? Zu means to tell, gao. Yu means to cause the cause of disease. The doctor must first thoroughly inform the patient of the cause of disease to allow the patient to understand and not dare to repeat the same offense. He must also thoroughly understand how to transform abnormal behavior into normal. He must thoroughly investigate a fatigued person's or grieving widow's hidden feelings of distress, kind and gentle. Where kind and gentle words are used to open up and direct the person. Serious words are used to startle the patient. Scary words are used to frighten the patient. The doctor must make the patient earnestly and sincerely believe him. Afterwards, zuyo is miraculously effective in my life. The power I've gained from this has not been little. And then the second part in the text says, emotional disorders are particularly difficult to treat using drugs, citing Ye Tian Si from 1667 to 1746. Wu Kun further notes that plants not having emotions were incapable of curing emotional disorders. According to popular proverb, there are 4 types of people difficult to cure: old monks, widows, virgins, and young men. And there are 4 disorders difficult to treat: alcohol, lust, greed, and qi. Wu Zhang, famous of his systematic studies of drug formulas and his case on emotional countertherapy, also found that such ritual prayer was important to balance the emotions and to allow the qi to flow. Healers clearly look at the outward appearance of emotion, Qing, and as is needed, pray, Zu, about the cause of disease, Bing Yu. It is said that when the emotions Zhi are unbalanced, Pian, then the Qi has a complementary illness. Under the emotions, by using a preponderance of one emotion to harmonize the imbalance in another according to the production order of the 5 phrases. Moving and changing the vitality transforms the qi of the interior organs in the channel to constructive and defense qi, restabilizing the patient. So with that, I pass along to Banyi.
So I'll be reading a passage that's kind of like more about like the relationship between like you know, what, or as the ancients, as they like conceptualize the relationship between qi, like stagnated qi and like ghosts and spirits, and you know how like kind of the boundaries between the three are very fluid and changing. So in another passage from the Divine Pivot, which is the Ling Shu, it's another like related text, discussion of thievish winds, which is Zeifeng. The author explicitly argues against the popular belief that ghosts are a hidden cause of disease. Instead of expelling ghosts, Zhuyo was particularly apt for treating disorders whose origins were so minute and subtle that they resulted in a stagnation of pathogens in the body that could not be seen or heard. Discussions of Zhuyo often describe the disorders it treated by the terms wei, like microscopic, or also meaning minute, profound, and subtle, or qian, meaning hidden, latent, or potential. These terms, like xuan, meaning dark, subtle, or abstruse, did not imply that the causes of such illnesses were unknowable. So in this sense, the hidden and mysterious causes of sickness, which rituals were particularly suited to treat, were occult. And so it kind of like, it's interesting that it kind of like brings out like the role of the shaman, and you know, as I think in the passage that you were reading before, you know, like the shaman had to be kind of like in a position of sincerity, you know, absolute sincerity, and like, you know, as a result, we're able to kind of speak to the like the origins of the disease, you know, hence like or I guess others interpret that as like demons or ghosts. And then there's another short passage. Another short passage from Huangdi Neijing. Like we love the conversation between the Yellow Emperor and Qihua. Like it's, you know, as Donna was saying before, how like you know, like how I guess like incredibly humble like this whole thing is. You know, like they're really just trying to like create a conversation about this topic. So the Yellow Emperor said, "In recent times, what you have said is what patients know for themselves. Even though someone has neither encountered pathogenic qi nor feels anxious, they become sick. What is the reason? Could the only reason be a matter of ghosts and spirits?" Qihua replied, "This is also because the old pathogens lingered, so within the patient's body, and had not yet manifested themselves. When the mind harbors animosity or envy, the blood and qi become disordered in the interior of the body and conflicted. The condition's origin is so minute and subtle that even if you look for it, it cannot be seen, or listen for it, cannot be heard. Hence, it is as if the ghosts were the cause were ghosts and spirits." The Yellow Emperor said, "How does expelling and stopping illness work?" Qihua replied, "The ancestral Wu, or the shaman, knew that to overcome the multitude of illnesses, they first needed to understand from whence the illness arose, and then were able to expel and stop it." And then we hand it over to Jess.
Hello. So that's actually a really interesting way to transition, because the character for a shaman in Chinese is like the earth with mouths on top of it. So it's like the transmission from the higher powers are coming into you as this person who exists in this body. So I thought it would be interesting to choose a passage that correlates to how, putting emphasis on how each part of the body and each part of, specifically from this passage, your hands actually relate to different parts of the body as well. So, so this one is, I believe, from Shengji Zonglu. So, in high ancient times, there was the method called Zuyou, of using rituals to pray about the cause of illness by moving the vital essence and transforming the qi. It involved deducing the cause of illness and expelling it using incantations. There was no illness it could not cure. Today's written exorcism, 属境, is a remnant of this practice. There are 5 aspects to this method. First, controlling and using it rests in technique. Second, deducing the cause of illness and applying this method depends on sincerity. Third, to symbolize the disease using the graphical expression of the heart. Nothing compares to charms. Fourth, to attack the disease using spoken rites, 鬼. Nothing compares to an incantation, zu. Fifth, between the fingers and palm to grasp and control illness, there are the eyes, 目, of hand divination called mudras, or yin. The 5 techniques are complete. How is it not appropriate to take up and apply these therapeutic methods? These techniques were meant to move the gods. Only someone who had purified himself through ritual could convey his feelings to the gods to stop illness. Otherwise, as the text explains, if one's heart is not pure and pious, one could not move even mere mortals. How more does this apply to Zuyo, which uses ritual water and charms to expel the multitude of pestilences? The section concludes, therefore, one must apply this method with a sincere heart and focused mind. To attain this sincerity, one must ritually purify the heart and discipline one's conduct according to ritual restrictions in order for one's spirit to clearly manifest one's virtue. After this, wield the mudras and use the charms along with the curses. 2 formulas, 2 and incantations, 2. This is the way of Zuyo. So really quick before I move on, I just here in my notes, but I wanted to show everyone this little diagram. So it shows the different sections in which you can create these mudras, but healers use secret hand gestures to complete each ritual. The sections of the fingers and palms called mu, or eyes, correspond to different disorders, which the healer controlled by pressing yin and saying an incantation. For example, in order to stop 3 women from squabbling, this is from the text. The ritualist pressed the bird mu, miao mu, and ghost mu, gui mu, to command the demons and suppress the unruly scene by making people's tongues unable to move. I believe this image was also presented in some of the posts for the show. But here's the last excerpt, which is the correct ritual performance of writing charms, reciting incantations, and gesturing reflected the healer's perfect sincerity. At each step in the ritual process, the healer moves and transforms his chi as he meditates on this task. So with every brush stroke when writing a charm and with every ritual gesture, he gathered and focused his emotive power into his performance, just as calligraphy, dance, and other arts translated kinesthetic energy to reflect an artist's inner character. In Zuyo rituals, these activities literally translated energy into words. So I think putting emphasis on the application of like that sincere heart and that purity, and also to remind ourselves that like these little, the places in between the hands, which correspond to the eyes, which also are one of the manifestations of the kidney, which is where it's called like Ningwen, our life gate, which is where our entire like pre-heaven or congenital chi comes from. And with that, it actually manifests through the eyes, which is what moves us forward into the future. So I thought this could be like a really good way to transition into doing the Qigong practice and start to focus a little more on breathing, and to also just keep those intentions in mind as we like go through this whole discussion and this presentation. So I encourage everyone to stand up and make sure you find enough space to at least like enough space for your arms to come out. So yeah, everyone find some space too. If you don't feel comfortable, don't feel like obligated to do it. If you feel like you want to move, then by all means. So first I wanted to just focus a little bit more on breathing and like where the diaphragm is. So the diaphragm actually connects all the way down to this part of the body, which is from your collarbone or your clavicle all the way down to here. So this is supplying your entire body with oxygen that goes to your blood, to your organs, and ultimately can help relieve things like anxiety, nourishing your entire body. So at first I want everyone to put their hands either left over right, just down here below your belly button, and to just focus on breathing in down through your dantian. So this is your storage area. So just take a couple breaths and just focus on breathing into that space. And normally we have the tendency to breathe from up here, you know, with just how we were conditioned to breathe throughout time. But when you're a baby, you'll notice that a lot of babies actually breathe from this area. So firstly, I want to have everyone keep their feet shoulder width apart and your feet parallel pointing forward. And push your knees out slightly in order to prevent damage for long term. And I'm just gonna move a little bit so I have a tiny bit more room. So first, through breathing, I'm gonna do like a very small meditation. And you'll tuck your chin slightly and keep your tongue on the tip of your mouth, the roof of your mouth rather. So as you keep your hands down on your dantian, you'll start to envision yourself slowly sinking in with your knees slightly bent and keeping your sacrum nice and calm and open. And when you do these practices, it's good to have this intention of your breath focusing from the bottom of your spine. So the very base of your spine is where we'll begin. And this is the start of both the Ren and the Du channel, which I'll discuss a little bit. So this, well, imagine just like this, almost this condensed golden pearl that will substitute as the breath. And you imagine it as a golden thing in order to create this light that goes throughout your entire body. So you'll imagine it slightly as you breathe in to go through the back of your spine and then up to the vertex at the very top of your head. And then once you get here, you breathe out through the nose slightly, and then imagine the pearl going down the center of your body and then back to the base of the spine. So with this, you'll always constantly breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, just very gently, very naturally. So you're creating this circuit. And the circuit is in response to this microcosmic orbit that a lot of Taoism speaks to, and it's basically speaking to this idea that our entire body is a landscape, and that it has all these aspects to it that help us maintain our well-being and create this inner world that is very harmonious. So let's go back into the stance and just keep your hands above your dantian. So take a deep breath in. And then imagine this pearl going through the top of your head. And as it moves up from the top, slowly breathe out through the nose. And then imagine the pearl coming down the center of your body. We'll repeat this 2 more times. And this will be a fundamental breathing technique through what we'll be doing. And you can continue breathing, and as you do this, just imagine that the pearl is going through your body, and naturally, like if you find some resistance or anything like that, that's natural. You just want to have it be aware of those things, and then naturally, by regulating these things, it'll eventually dissipate the blockages. So next, we'll basically focus on the idea is you can continue breathing. So we'll do, as you continue breathing, I'll just briefly discuss this meditation. So breathe in and imagine it going up through the spine, through the vertex, down through the center line, and then up, and continue this. So the Du channel is the one it goes up through the back, through the spine. And as we're in our womb, and the fetus is receiving all of this information from the external world, and it's allowing us to integrate into this earthly life. And as you're coming down, it's going down the Ren channel, which has to do with receiving nutrients from your ancestry, from your generations, through nutrients, through food, and through memory, which is what the enteric system holds. So you're wanting to just create that circulation. So next, to finalize, we'll just do like 7 breaths with very focused and intentional mind. So breathe in. Imagine the pearl going up the spine, and breathe out, down through the center line. And continue breathing in your natural path. And you might feel some slight tingling or some sensations, and that's the body naturally cleansing itself. We'll do 3 more breaths. Last one. And when you finish, we're going to actually bring the hands down here, and we're going to create this sun, basically unifying the earth energy, the earth chi, and make sure that you keep your hands they never should be straight. They should always be kind of rounded, because everything in the universe is made of spheres. So we'll do this 2 more times, a total of 3, and then you'll breathe out once you pass your mouth and your nose, and then we'll do a breathe in. So you can see that there's this constant cycle, and you're gathering this chi from the sun, and then compressing it, and then always whenever you finish a form, you put your hands back here at Dantian. So the next one is a little bit more like movement based, so make sure you have room to move around. So this one, it's just one aspect of 7-star hitting, and 7-star hitting, well, I'll focus mostly on the lung, which is the front move of the lung point means that it's basically just corresponding like directly in front of the organ itself. And the lungs are responsible for defensive qi or wei qi, which is like where pathogens can come into the body. So it has to do with the immune system, essentially. So first, make sure you have your stance good, where feet are pointing forward, shoulder width apart, and your knees slightly out. And make sure also your sacrum is flat. It's not like jutting out or going too far in. And from this, we'll just slowly start to move our bodies. And you'll see a lot of people in the park doing this exercise, and it helps to like move the spine. And when it stretches the spine out, it actually like massages all the organs. So you're just gonna let your arms like naturally move back and forth. Okay, and then now you're going to make a light fist like this, you can see, and then you'll just slowly start to hit this part of your body. And typically you'll want to do this like at least in succession of like 7 times. So if you do 7, do 7, 14, or 21 total. And then I believe we did 7, so we'll just do this as a demonstration. And eventually you'll let your arms kind of swing back down very gently. And then you'll just stand in standing meditation. You can even put your hands back where they were and just feel what your body feels after doing something like this. So this is to encourage everyone to, strengthen that lung chi, and to just move your body a little bit more, because we sit a lot now these days. So it's good to do that. And then lastly, we'll do a quick slapping method, which is also something you see a lot of the old folks doing in the park. I personally love it. So the skin again is the wei qi. So we're gonna start from the inside. So it might get a little loud, but don't worry. Palms and then up. And then focus on the joints because that's where chi can get stuck. Go on the inside here. Switch. Down, and then turn your palms on the outside. And then you're going to start hitting your chest. Down your body. Back to the knee. Left panel up to the frontier. Basically here. And then you'll want to also do this in the same number of cycles, either 7 times all at once. And then once you close here, you just remember to do that same closing. We will do 3 of these. Breath in. And then once your hands pass your mouth, do breath out. Breath in. Breath out. Breath in. And breath out. And then once you finish, you can put your hands back on Banyi. And then store all of that chi and all that movement and all that energy and keep it here. And you'll always have access to that. So after you finish, it's traditional in martial arts to move your left to your right foot. And then you put your hands down to your side. And then we're finished. So that's my section for the Qigong movement. So I'll pass it off to Donna, who's going to do acupressure.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
So
I'm already sweating.
I felt Lu's up.
Yeah, so I just want to actually, if I can just respond a little bit to my experience, of that, which is great. One, I'm not moving enough, and that reinforced it because it felt so good. And you know, it's really one of these really great basic aspects to remind ourselves that the whole idea of health in the Chinese medicine, all medical models, but in particular the Chinese medicine model, is about healthy circulation. Right? Our medical system has this concept of channels that run through the body that convey chi and blood, and that any illness will occur when there's blockages to the circulation, or if there's deficiency of chi or deficiency of blood, or the absence, the idea of what you were talking about in terms of these spirit possessions. No one's going to nothing can take possession of us if there's no vacancy, right? So the integrity and the health of the whole body, the physical form is really important. And taking back, you know, to Chinese medicine concepts, a grounding of mind, body, spirit, and they're always having been in conversation about this. It's not something that's just part of our modern age and new age of medicine. This is part of our inheritance in all ancient and indigenous medicines, not just what we have from China in our inheritance. But I also wanted to talk about this part where we did that, you know, whole swinging thing. So we're not only sort of striking this front move point of the lung, right, lung 1, we're also hitting the back, which is where the kidneys lie, right? So this is the lung is the metal element, right? So to Lu, lung and large intestine sit with metal, right? And the kidney you sit with water. And so that puts you guys in relationship, right? in this very physical way. But it also puts us in relationship that when we think about the breath, there is an aspect of the breath that the lungs are responsible for in sort of expelling. But in terms of the body being able to grasp lung chi, the kidneys grasp the chi of what the lungs bring in. So that this movement and exercise is something that's actually, you know, even more important from a lot of different perspectives of this, also this relationship between these phases. Okay. So for my part, just taking, so this lung 1, right? I just want to sort of put this point. We consider massage that's just, you know, just acupressure. We can be gentle to it. We can talk to it. Oftentimes when we're at our desk, we're this, right? We're all on Zoom. We're all kind of hunched over our phones, right? So actually remembering to sort of open ourselves up, open this chest. Jess said it so beautifully before, open up our hearts. It's so important. And sometimes you feel this stuff. It's all tight up here, right? Everything that's under the clavicle and then sort of these first rib spaces are all tender and tight. So sometimes it helps just to kind of comb it out, right? Just be in touch with our bodies. I'm saying this like I do this all the time, I don't, but because you guys are making me do it. But like you feel that point, you can feel where it's tender, right? You can feel the sort of tenderness. So no one has to drill into it, just kind of comb it, just be aware, right? This stuff gets tight. Right? So connecting the lungs to the large intestine channel, because lungs and large intestine are a yin-yang pair. Right? I'm going to bring in these ideas, even though. So I'm going to go to this point called Li4, Hegu, right? Which you can find when you look at the V of where the thumb and the index finger kind of come into, and just feel around, right? There's a kind of a space you'll feel tenderness. You'll know it, right? Yeah. You can kind of just massage that with your other thumb. If you have a headache, this is a really good point for headache, especially if you get someone to press it for you, because it can go harder than you can do yourself. Because this is the command point of the face and the head. All right, so you can do that on one hand. When you feel that tenderness, this is also good for back pain, because the hand, as you refer to, is a microsystem of the whole body, where we can map the whole of the body on the hand. And the long bones on our hands can correspond to the long bone of our spine. So this is a really good point as well for back pain. So not only your face, but also in your head, but your back. So this is a good point for back pain, wherever you feel that tenderness. That represents chi blockage, not only in your hand, but somewhere else in your body. Right? All right. So while we're on the hands, I want to move us then up to this point of the pericardium channel. Some of you may be familiar with this product that came out years ago called C-bands. They were selling them like in Duane Reade's for people that were used to go on cruises and would get seasick. It's basically an elastic band with a bead on it. So you could put it actually on this point. Pericardium 6 is around 2 or 3 inches above the wrist on the medial side of the hand, so the palmar side up above. Oftentimes you can also find it where a big vein crosses the tendons that are there. And you can just gently, with your thumb, soft thumb, massage in there. Right? This is a point that's often also helpful for nausea, because this is a microsystem of our body. And so when we get nauseous, stomach chi is going up the wrong way, and we want to anchor it. So we can massage this point, right? So when you feel nausea in this part of the body, when the chi should be down here. So we want to coax it back down to where it belongs.
Does it matter if it's left or right side?
No, you can do both sides. Right. This is also a really good calming point. Pericardium relates to the heart channel, right? The pericardium in Chinese medicine, it literally is translated as Xin Bao, right? The wrapper of the heart, or bao like a something yummy, like that. But the pericardium wraps and secures the heart, and we recognize it that in our anatomy. But the Chinese medicine idea of this is the way to the heart, through the pericardium, because the heart has its job, but the pericardium protects it, so we can access the heart, treat the heart through this point. And so let's just take a deep breath and just sort of feel ourselves taking care of ourselves, feel ourselves just holding our heart space. And then even you can just go up the middle line, just anywhere along that pericardium channel, just feeling anything. I'd like to bring my grandmother into these experiences, because she was not a student of Chinese medicine, but she was one of these old ladies. But wasn't even in a park. All of a sudden, like out of nowhere, one day I was visiting her, and all of a sudden she's doing this kind of stuff, sitting in her chair watching television. I go, "What are you doing?" She's like, "What? I'm exercising." I'm like, "What are you?" And I was a kid, and I was like being rude. I'm like, "That's not exercise," because we think of exercise as having to be like action, not movement, right? But she had learned in the old age, the senior center, and this the gathering of these old folks, they taught each other how to do things, and she used to just channel tap. So, to just sort of echo Jess's point, we can channel tap. We can channel tap just sitting, watching TV, just going And think, you know, if you don't know the channel location, you could just think lateral, medial, you know, just make sure you're striking across the 6 zones of your body and around. So 3, and then, you know, on the anterior, lateral, posterior, and the median. You just want to encourage.
And doing this also naturally promotes circulation.
Yeah,
right?
circulation.
Like,
Yeah, we
breaks
don't even
things
have to
out.
think about, we need chi to move everywhere. We need it inside, we need it outside, we need it just moving. We need it to keep our minds bright. We need it for resilience and just being able to respond as opposed to always being reactive. We need the right chi to be ordered. So, I mean, even in biomedical terms, that we can move from sympathetic to parasympathetic or from stress states to rest states, right? The wisdom of the body holds the code to know how to recover, but we're just so busy, right, that it's really hard to get to that recovery place, that rest state to allow for recovery. So a lot of times what we want to do is we want to unblock the chi and make sure that the body can rest, the mind can rest, right? That the right space is in the heart for the spirit to rest. So another good use point is this one, Li10. It's about an inch, inch and a half. You'll find it if you just hold your arm out like a thumbs up, right? And you just kind of ride from the crook of the elbow. You see this crease on the edge of your elbow, just where that ends, just kind of ride up, and you can sometimes feel either a lump or a dip, right? This is I forgot the Chinese name. Anyways, a large intestine 10. I'll get it in a second. You can massage this in there, right? This is the shosangli.
Very tender.
Yeah, very tender, right? Very tender. And you can even massage that one that's right above in that where that crease is. So this sort of inch space. This is the hand 3 miles point. So there's a hand or an arm 3 miles. So when you're exhausted and you just can't go any further, you're gonna go 3 more miles. This is the thing that's gonna sort of put the chi and blood back into motion. There's a corresponding Zhusangli, a foot 3 mile point. So if your elbow is your knee, because it is, right? If we were on all fours, and we once were when we were babies crawling, our knees and elbows are the same joint, right? So if your elbow is your knee, you're gonna feel that shin bone. Let me push back. Feel the shin bone, and then you'll feel the shin bone kind of dip. There'll be like a dip in there in the bone itself. Then as you go lateral out maybe an inch or 2, you feel kind of a dip in that area. So we're looking, when you do acupressure, we're looking for zones and areas. I'm not trying to put a needle in it, right? Just sort of look, and you feel a little divot there. That's stomach 36. This is an earth on earth point. So the ancients took this 5-phase system of transformation and also overlaid it into the medicine and into the cataloging of points. So this is an earth on earth, and it's really this channel, the stomach channel is really rich in chi and blood. And so we want the chi and blood to be open and circulating. When chi and blood is open and circulating, it's a real pro-immune effect. So massaging this point is really, really helpful.
So that is the stomach channel?
Stomach channel, yeah. Yang Ming stomach channel, the most bright, so this is the yang channel.
Which would also correspond with the large intestine.
Exactly.
So this would also help promote a lot of chi and blood movement.
Exactly. Right.
Always feels good to do this one.
And then sometimes if you go on the inner side of the inner leg here, and every time I palpate patients, they feel, and they're like, "Wow, that's tender." You feel that tender point? Yeah, whoa, yeah.
Wow.
So this is just another nice place to just kind of like massage and love yourself. Right? Send some good ideas in here, because this gets, like you said, Jess, the joints get really stuck. Right? And so we want to make sure we're keeping things moving and circulating.
I also love that, the way that your hand kind of naturally moves With cups like right over your
Yeah.
knees, you can feel it
You
like
could just sit here like this,
where your thumbs
watch your
are.
TV, where your thumbs go, and then that's where your index finger is on stomach 36.
Yeah.
So these two are both earth channel points. Earth on earth, they would call them Harari points. So they're really helpful for digestion. And digestion, by the way, doesn't mean just like chewing up food and eating it. It's actually also integrating nutrients and eliminating what we no longer need. Right? So this is really a critical part and relates to respiration as well. Right? Digestion and respiration, right, are critical aspects of this. All right, I'll do two more and then we can, because I can keep going, but I don't want to keep.
We should recommend everyone to do this while they're on Zoom calls.
Yeah, no, I actually, I think we would be a lot brighter, right? We would be a lot less, especially this thing of like rolling ourselves back, right? I'll do three more because Lu said this before. I mean, just take this just take this, put your hand right here, and just feel around there. How tense are you?
Oh, very
Hard as a rock.
Yeah, it's hard, right? It's really hard, right? And then when we relate and we think about what happens in the upper back, right? The upper back is where, everyone catches cold, right? This is all this stuff that gets blocked up really fast. It's really important that chi circulates up here. So it is tense. We got to make sure we pay attention here. So if you feel sort of the high point of where your hand is and where it is most tender, feel it. There's got to be a point that is most tender. This is on the gallbladder channel. Stick your fingers, 2 or 3 fingers right in there, and just kind of squish around there. Just do nice circles.
By the way, there's some police commotion going on out there. Well, we're having a very spiritual, peaceful.
Oh, we send them good
good
vibes. Health and safety. I think everybody needs more care. If we took better care of ourselves, we could take better care of each other.
I also sometimes felt like the recognitions of you being not healthy is something that's also like a big missing from the communities.
It is, yeah.
Like we
Because we're ricocheting off of each other because it's not resolved.
Yeah.
So the non-resolution is just, I'm just gonna take it out on you, and I'm gonna take it out on you because it feels, I don't know what to do with it in here. So this is also this idea of possession, right? This disordered chi, right? Because it's not settled, and it's got to go somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Or it will probably go into you.
Right. Or it's already in, and it's trying to resolve in a very primitive way. Right.
And I think these like pains and the tenderness that we feel are where those things kind of dwell and they live in these little crevices, in these little spaces. Because like, chi and energy are so etheric. They're like very kind of, I don't know, these things that float around almost, they have no form. So I like this idea of being able to like physically touch them and be like, okay, it's time for you to like move on.
Or I love you and I release you.
Yes.
I mean, I'm so cheesy about it, but I spent a long time being really judgmental about these things and feeling kind of shame and blame, like, why am I holding on to this? Why won't it go away? What am I doing wrong? I don't know. We should all be a little self-reflective, but then I think really the kindness and gentleness will actually kind of maybe allow it to move along, right? Because it needs to be acknowledged. Maybe it was a pain or an offense that happened a long time ago or yesterday. And maybe we can just say, hey, I got this. I acknowledge it, and we can let it go, right?
Right.
Because sometimes I think things stay with us because there's an idea that there's a mission here, they're supposed to, right? We can get into this discussion about emotions later. Okay. The other one you can do is take your thumbs and sort of like hook it to the back, the base of your skull. And you can just kind of go all along the occiput up here, right? There's a couple of points here. There's UB10, there's G1120, right? So where all of the stuff connects for us, all of that we hold up in the world, the skull, you just want to be tender in here, open this area up a little bit. Just squish. Just loving massage.
It almost feels like the skull is like all this stuff is pooling right there because it's like dripping down from the back of the skull into this little puddles.
I found like every time when I get anxious, like the most tense area will be like the lower neck and the shoulder and the chest, and I become like this naturally.
Yeah. Right, because we're armoring, we're protecting, right? What does a turtle do? The armadillo goes inward, right? Because we're overwhelmed, right? So we want to open this stuff up because we got, once you know you got it, you can handle it, it's okay. So then while we're at the top of the head, I want to sort of connect to the tip of your ears and imagine an imaginary line that goes up to the top of the vertex of your head. This is by way, right, the do 20, right? This is where we actually receive in from the heavens because we stand upright in the world. We move from being blobs and babies to crawling and standing upright. Now we want to tap this. This is where we take in from the world. We can awaken this. There's 4 points surrounding this one point. All students, exhausted people, tap up to bring literally chi and blood to the brain because we're so tired and it's poop. We want to refresh the energy, right?
Yeah.
By the way, it also helps, just brush your hair, like brush your head. Like, there's not enough touch and contact anymore. So ways that we have gotten out of habits of brushing and being in contact is really helpful. So this we take in from the heavens, we receive from the heavens. When we do the Qigong, this is what we're imagining. We're taking in universal heavenly Qi and bringing it into the body to this point. Right? So you want to activate and feel that point.
There's the Chengyu of the old student who was like falling asleep. So he had to use a string to
yeah, you imagine
hang.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. So we have an imaginary and real thing that sort of connects us. And we have, there's this passage I read, we have a transcendent anchorage to heaven. Right? This is our humanity, our human inheritance. We forget this. But we have transcendent anchorage to heaven, and it's through us being upright to this point. Right? So this is what the ancients spoke of as well.
I always imagine kind of the passage I was reading before, and how a lot of ancient cultures talk about the heart being the true mind, and or the mind being living within the heart, and how that energy kind of in the shape of a donut is always circulating in and out. It's always going through that point.
That's right.
I just love imagining myself in a donut.
No, that's right. with a donut in a donut.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Yeah.
And then taking it to the base of us, the bottom of our feet. So if this is my foot, right? These are my toes. There's a ball of my foot. This is right behind and in that center. So that's, you don't have to, we can actually imagine that in contact with the ground. And this is also something really important when we do Qigong practices. Because we always want to have anchorage on earth as well, because we're not floaty people yet. We haven't reached a spirit state, right? We are spirits that live and reside within a physical body. So we need to be in our physical body, in the physical realm. So with anchorage also to the earth, right? Because earth supports us and we support the earth. And even with those Qigong practices, this is where we descend and clean out, not to put the garbage into the earth, but to trust earth soil to transmute and transform, digest all that we can't use and have it take incarnation in another form. Right? So interestingly, week 8 of the 5 phases of the 5 elements, we talk about earth. I always have to make sure we know that it's 2, right? It's soil. It's not the planet Earth per se, like the big blue marble, but it's soil, which is really what things emerge, tubers, grow from, and where our life, origins are rooted.
Yeah, and I love this. The exhibit is a perfect representation of that too.
Yeah,
and I've also been thinking a lot about mycelium and the mushroom network, and how that's actually something that we all are naturally cellularly originate from. We share the same DNA as mushrooms, and I think it's such an interesting practice to do that and to think about that. Creating the aspects of life and death, and recycling that energy, so it's never really wasted or putting bad energy out there, but it knows what to do in order to transmute it, like you were saying
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and just while we were setting up the idea of 5 phase, right? There's so many ways to translate wuxing, right? There's 5 phase or 5 element. I tend to use the phase piece because the phase reinforces the idea of transformation, evolution. And that's what the ancients were observing and thinking through in their conceptualization of 5 phase. Is how do we understand how things are transformed so that we know when things get stuck, what we need, what can support things moving through. Right, so that's that aspect.
Yeah, from that like natural cycle. Yeah. Yeah. I love that we decided to actually sit in this direction because in the end, before we're interacting and then all of us were a big part of that interaction. Very cool.
Okay, thank you, Donna and Jess. We went through 2/3 of our practice today, and the last one, we're going to have a little bit of practice together. We'll demonstrate, or I had a lot of concern before doing this. I was telling Donna and Jess about demonstrating the calligraphy with everybody because I, like, as Jess read the part, I think to have creating an incantation or a talisman, you have to have like a certain practice level, and they're using like a different type of paper for certain reason, different type of ink, and the way that you're leading through the character strokes. Yes, strokes, how you write it, the sequence of it, it all has like a reason and a purpose for it. And for me, I'm like really new to this, but I wanted to, I know like there's also a discussion about how the difference between a practitioner and an artist, like for me, as I'm entering a concept of a new knowledge, I would be able to do it in like showing the process of doing it. But for a practitioner, that you wouldn't do it if you're not resolved for the certain issues. So I think for me, it was conflicted to bring in the writing incantation into it, but I think it's a big part why we're together talking about Zhuyu today, because that is in a way that you're putting or you're transforming your qi through writing the character and through going through, like transition into this powerful piece of paper and piece of that holds spirit. So I think it's good for everybody to view the process, and then and then I also wanted to say this is an interpretation and a process of interpretation. So just wanted to clear that.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Okay, so for me, I'll start, and then Banyi also will be incorporated with like talking, or everybody welcome to.
You can all chime in.
Yeah, and then also like please have a pen for the writing, and I'll be demonstrating, but everyone's will be doing it together. So Banyi will be writing and talking at the same time.
Oh, yeah. Make sure to do this.
Now that we're on this, we can
multi.
we're having the qi come out onto the paper. So because I felt like this is also a demonstration for people who can do it at home as well. If you're not knowing what to write, you can write things that in your mind into paper, and that is also the way of translating the qi into something. Like when we're younger, we're going to like exams, and sometimes we're just drawing random things on the paper if we're anxious. I think that way I see it's a way that you're like this Zhuyu has like a mentioning about putting into something into a graphics and image and drawings that holds that energy that you're passing to. So we want to just speak brushing over. And today I'm demonstrating the 3 characters here, and if you can see it large. They don't have a name or term or a sound, because they're created characters. But based on Zhuyu text, this is three characters will fix your pain in your heart. So if you have anything, like gathered and unclear in your heart, writing about these characters will help for resolving that problem. But also based on the Zhuyu text, the way of having it to deal with your, like the medical way of dealing with it is to burn the writing and add into ashes and put it in water and drink it. Please do not do it because it requires certain paper and ink that specific for this method. But we're going to just do the writing part.
Not eating it.
Not yet. Everybody laugh because they were scared.
I think to speak a little bit about how the structure of the implementation characters, because there's kind of usually a fixed way of doing it. So maybe if you could come a little closer.
So I'll start. So I'm writing from the top to the bottom. So
yeah, so what Lu is writing is the top radical for Shang. So Shang, usually meaning head or to be in charge of something. And then now you're writing the character for Shi, which is to eat. And I think the word consume, eating has come up a lot in our previous conversation. And then usually, so the lower right character is the variable. So usually, that is kind of, it stands in for the cause or the disease itself that you're trying to exorcise or expel.
So I'm writing the second character. It also has the top part that Banyi was describing. So the characters doesn't mean anything, but it's a combination of the reasons. So this one doesn't require talking, so you're just going to focusing on the strokes.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that I was reading in the text that it talks about kind of the how the shaman will try to conjure up an imagery of how these characters work together. So Shang would be the topmost character would be the general, and then the general would be commanding these ghost soldiers to consume or eat the demon raw. So it's a very visceral, it's a very visceral imagery, and it's kind of a military military scene. And I kind of wonder if if it's something that we can customize for our own needs, because I personally I'm not really into super militaristic imagery, but if it's you can substitute it for something that symbolizes a lot of external force, for example,
or even biological systems. When we even think about how we understand the body to sort of repel disease, we have macrophages, we have white blood cells that literally come in and consume. So sometimes we think about this in very esoteric terms, and then it has either an appeal to you or a repulsion, or somewhere in between, right? Because those things I'm always not really sure about because they're things I can't see.
Right.
But just as you were talking, I was just wow, this is actually the way we describe biological systems, right? We understand where white blood cells, they literally come in and they eat the stuff that doesn't belong there and moves it out. And I just think it's fascinating again and again and again where we see these layers upon layers on different levels of our human experience in its physical and emotional and spiritual realms, right? The same stories. They didn't know about macrophages, they didn't know anything about white blood cells coming, they didn't know anything about this kind of cellular level of life, but that's what they were describing. Yeah, so, and I hear the military because that was a framework that everybody at that time well understood, but yet that's actually a real life internal experience.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't even try to write that. You're right, because I will look like I'm in kindergarten. The way my-
I can try it. I mean, all the same.
You put your first down, I'm like, I'm not even gonna get it.
So I think like, I guess I was thinking, since I'm not an expert, we're not experts, like we're kind of, trying to participate in this process of healing. So, I was thinking, about the possibility of like substituting the variable character for whatever, thing that you want to get rid of, for example, so I've been struggling with a sense of guilt, I'm not gonna go into deeper reasons, but it's just something that I think that I've struggled with for a while. So I'd like to use this as an opportunity to kind of really channel that emotive energy, and for it to be consumed by the generals or the white blood cells or whatever, however way we want to think about it. And it's interesting too that I read in the text that the one historian was kind of explaining why the character for Chiang, right? I'm really bad. Don't. Why these two characters are used, and so Shang Shi. So this and Shi is actually the word for the department that was in charge of the imperial food, the kitchen, people who were preparing the food. And so basically literally those who are in charge of eating the ghosts. So I think it's that's an interesting way of thinking about it. So that was the word that I had prepared. So guilt, 罪.
Yeah.
It's interesting, you're left-handed.
Yes, left-handed calligraphy.
I think that's why people were scolded being right-handed, because it's pretty difficult to be a left-handed calligrapher.
Yeah,
but you're doing it, it's beautiful.
Yeah, because then when you're writing this order, and then your hands will be on top.
Yeah, but if you can be really pretty.
Right. Yeah, there's a art.
It's not like No, it's great. We're just appreciating the challenge and what you're able to do.
Just appreciating that there's many ways of going about calligraphy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they do add in I think it's to enhance the powers, the thunder god is referred to a lot. So Lei Shen, so you can add in the character for Lei. Making it into a radical. It's weird because sometimes when I'm writing, I forget what I'm doing. When you write something too many times, you start to not recognize it.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's part of the idea. That's part of the release. Yeah?
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
Because there's some part of you that is so rhythm and in tune, and then all of a sudden it's gone.
Yeah.
I find that practice is actually very much so correlated to Tai Chi, because it's there's been, I don't know how many times I've gone through a specific form, and right in the middle I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, what was the next move again? No matter how many times you do something, sometimes it just happens. So I think that intention and focus are part of the practice of calligraphy, and also the fluidity of it and the way it moves as well.
So what did you tuck in there that time, Banyi? What's that? that's not a little scene in there. So this one had the guilt. What's this?
That's So 罪恶 is it's great. It's a 罪恶 is either sin or guilt. It's
Oh, it's another word. Okay, got it.
Right. So like yeah, I think oftentimes these characters like combine together to like form meaning. You know, this is like art, like this is like my gibberish that like I'm hoping to like, you know, kind of infuse energy into. But I think it's just really the process of doing it, you know, and then kind of using breathing and like it really yeah, it's like it means a lot for the person who's doing it.
I even think the belief system and the idea that you can be free of, you can be relieved of this thing that binds you, right? You know, whether it's guilt or shame or, you know, that it could just be kind of, one day you'll just not carry it anymore.
Yeah, you know, like I found this process of writing really relates to art making because you know, like the way that a lot of, you know, like a lot portion of artists making art is to, you know, go through the process of their mind and then try to understand the stage that they couldn't let it go or understand like visually. So to me, this character writing or drawing the signs that in the Zhuyu text, one way has this like a metaphorical of how to release through images, like how to heal through images and through the meaning of images. And then I see that relate to the art making a lot in the process. Banyi has another one.
Oh yeah, I have this it's a crowd favorite. There's this one incantation is you can't guess it already, is to heal constipation. This one. Like 大小便, 通大小便. And so like, you know, as I'm finding kind of like I did it like I repeated it a lot of times. Like it's like
This everybody can follow because it's a sign.
it's a sign. I think you do it like the spiral is like you do it 4 times. You count like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's like this pattern.
Is this supposed to mimic the gut?
I think I don't know. Yeah, it's
Kind of feels that way, right?
it feels like yeah, like the winding like channels, like
Stuckness.
Then slowly unraveling.
slowly unraveling because
How many circles?
4 circles.
I'm just meditating watching you guys.
When you start the solo, when you concentrate.
this one I find particularly like breathing is really important, like doing it because
Doing the
It's like the
circle.
circle.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, like I found I also has a circle related one. Like this one to me, I think when you brought a good point is like it's imitating our bodies and almost like making it connecting to like a smoothly out. So this pattern, if everyone has a problem, can try 4 circles.
Jess has got a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm very constipated, maybe that's why. I didn't get that movement going. Yours actually looks like a flower. Yeah, yeah, it kind of looks like a budding.
Yeah, a little bud.
So the last one I'm going to do related to Banyi's the circle, but this time the circle doesn't go down, it goes inside, back to itself. And according to the Zhuyu text here, it says 九虚化七圈妙念火神七次. So the 九虚 refers to a medical term. It's where the weakness of your body has like the 9 weakness related to your organs. And so when like certain things, if your lungs weak, if your liver is weak, and certain problem will show through your body. But I'm not like super, like I don't know how does that related to. But then if things happens in that way, this is a pattern that you can repeat. It is a circle, repeat 7 times, and then at the end it goes back to. And while you're doing it, every time the circle goes, you read 火 portion once. So then it will be portion, 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 portion. And come back to the center. So then to me, it is like almost like a meditate for you to be centered in that way. And I do think drawing circles require a lot of concentration. So then you have like the evenness of the lines. So this is something I think we can like also practice at home. But the Zhu text has like, I printed out maybe over 200 pages of the signs. So it was like really rich study about this incantation in terms of the reference.
Right. And it's usually hard with like, like the ways that you would do it. Like sometimes you would have to hang the paper on like the door
Or eat it.
Eat it just has to be, you know, like very specific pairings.
I remember when we were talking about whether to include this or not, one of the things that we discussed was, you know, in just Chinese culture, right? You know, this calligraphy is kind of one of the masteries. And I remember way before I even started studying Chinese medicine or thinking about qi and blood, it was through practicing calligraphy and learning how to paint, that I really first heard about qi, right? Because it is really the expression of qi that comes through in your brush, right? And so it's not so hard to imagine that if you can harness qi in the expression of brushwork, that you also can be connected to smooth qi movement inside your person.
Body. Yeah, I think I didn't realize this until like I got deeper in here. In a way, I write calligraphy like not daily but often, and I found it really required me to like completely sit down and be calm. Otherwise, my strokes would be doing it like really hard, or it shows like if I'm like a nervous or anxious. But then if you're completely calm, and then the whole of your hand stays and brush shows. So then in that way, we're really looking at calligraphy in a way, you know, like connecting to tapping through the energies. Okay. Thanks everyone, this is it. And we're open up to the discussions.
Yeah. Let's see if anybody has questions.
I do have one question from Meghna. Could you explain why Shang and Shi are being used so frequently?
What characters again?
Shang and Shi, they spelled it Shang and Shi. I think just like phonetically. Yeah.
上师. Oh, 上师. I mean, the way that the text explains it is shang is like, you know, kind of well, they explain the like there's, I guess, you know, like I guess historians like look into like the origins of like this, you know, why these specific characters. And so like I guess I was explaining before how so 上师 it is all like speculation, it seems like. And 上师 is the name of like the imperial like food department, you know, whoever that's in charge of preparing food. And so like, you know, like 上师 like together it kind of relates back to this idea of like eating and like consuming the, you know, the demon ghosts, and I love how you were saying before, like, you know, it's like this active like, you know, eating is like taking in like, you know, it could be bad things, you know, you could be ingesting bad things, but you're like transforming it, you know, in the process. And so that's the way I like to think about it.
Right, and I think what you're saying about it is all speculative, right? Because no one wrote why. A lot of these things, these practices were things that were done way pre-modern to this modern, but even pre-modern to like, you know, China in 200, you know, or the Shang dynasty. These are practices that, you know, people, indigenous populations were doing that were somehow work, and then meaning gets laid on there, right? But if we just even look at that hypothesis in the context of an imperial system, where your food stores are is essentially your survival, not just you, the emperor's survival, but the entire kingdom, right? Like even biblically, we have references to like when there's a prediction in Egypt that there was going to be famine, there's going to be floods or no crops for 7 years. That was a disaster, that's an absolute, that's like a real plague in a way. So the power of the imperial officers that are responsible for food stores in the context of ancient times is very, very deep. Really, there's a lot of gravitas. It's not just us, we could just go order in seamless or whatever. Like we're so lighthearted about where food comes from. But everything was dependent on the agricultural science, dependent on weather systems they couldn't control. And so the idea that even the highest form of technology was agriculture, we don't even think of it. What do we know about agriculture? We're lucky my houseplants at home stay alive, right? If I remember to water them. But systems of agriculture really had to understand what to do around floods, what to do around like drought systems. People would die, and so this was a real part of the consciousness of ancient peoples. So these characters sort of, or I suppose, what they're speculating about is that's a deep power of what is at the heart and soul of an imperial system. Right?
I feel like I'm always reminded too about like the advent of agricultural systems were always put in place like when we started to develop more as a society, and some people do say that there was like a significant jump from when we actually started to do agriculture and understand animals and our relationships and our symbiosis with that. And like the thing that we were kind of mentioning before is like I've been like geeking out on mycelium, so I feel like I have to bring it up again. But I was actually watching, my roommate is a huge Trekkie, so he put me onto the Star Trek Discovery, and they actually named one of the characters after this renowned mycologist named Paul Stamets. And Paul Stamets is really innovative in his discoveries on how to basically use mycelium to save the planet and to also use that system that we genetically share DNA with. Billions of years ago, to try to understand like how to create fibers, how to create that we harvest that grows into food that we can eat. And like sometimes, like you're saying, I'm reminded of the fact that we forget with the accessibility and the immediacy and all the things that we have in this world that we're like very much so forced in a way, and I think rightly so, to take a moment and to slow down and to feel our own bodies and to feel our own food and to try to understand where those things come from. And for example, after leaving or after coming from the temple, I was taught this like food incantation. And before I eat food every time, I actually say this prayer. And I get like almost these visuals where I see different places where this food comes from and all the hands that had a part in bringing that food to my table. And I think that practice has actually really changed the way that I have a relationship with food, but also just seeing this whole cyclical aspect of that as well. So I think that we, moving through life, I think the more intentions that we have and the more like bigger picture and connectivity that we see is going to be something that will help us move forward and into an age of like more symbiosis of all those elements and all those things and connections with each other as well. So yeah.
What is the incantation that you do?
I don't remember the translation, and I don't know. It's basically, I don't know if I can say it, if I'm supposed to share it or not, but it basically is talking about the transmission of like, it's like, it actually started out with Lu Zhang. So it's like about the 5 elements, the 5 stars rather, which could also potentially correlate to different planets, which relate to different elements on Earth. So yeah.
That makes sense. Right.
Well, all traditions have, all religious traditions have, the grace before meals, for example. Really like where you pause and you give thanks for the food on your table, whether you're thanking God or your parents. It's just this whole concept of there's a line of actions and miracles, like really, right, that happened before this has been put, and transformation before this has been laid on your table, right? Because you talk about eating these ghosts raw, like that's just stuff. These things really are vivid, right? But why raw? Like I'm gonna say, since you said this an hour ago, like, why raw? Right? So what is raw? What does it mean?
What is the raw
you're not like versus cooking it, right? Versus actually. Anyway, I don't know that there's an answer, but it speaks to me. And I don't know if I'm right in the first way that I'm perceiving it, but it's like there's this kind of, it literally is raw. It's that bile, and the force of these soldiers, on your side, are so strong that they can not only get these ghosts, secure them, but they can consume them raw. There's no cooking involved, and they, and they're not going to be affected, right? Right, and that's what I decided to go with. I've been musing about it, but just the idea of cooking, like we're breaking food down, right? Like you're actually sort of, and think about all of us now in the pandemic. I remember seeing this with all your posts over the pandemic. How much you guys were cooking? Yeah. Very jealously, like very like I want to go over there, right? And I see Herb's there. But just the slowdown that we all had to be a little more conscious, a little bit more preparatory, and how that translates into more self-care, right? And gosh, a year ago we weren't even doing that, right? It was takeout. I walked around the block yesterday thinking, I don't want to cook, I'm kind of tired, I work all day, so I'm going to get, I couldn't decide what to get for takeout. It's been so far from my experience of the last 6 months, I couldn't even come up with a decision about what I wanted to get for takeout. So I ended up cooking instead, which was a good default, but it's just so strange, this idea of, what slowing down means. And it's not all bad. I mean, I think that's the other part. This pandemic definitely has been, like, I don't even want to use words that's being recorded because it's been terrible and it's been devastating and there's been immeasurable losses. But there's also a lot that we've recovered, I hope, and I think naming that is not to ignore the woundedness and the problems, but actually to give us reserves, in order to move forward.
And I've noticed a lot actually that like through this aspect of cooking, for one, there's the 5 elements, right? You cut with the blade with metal, you light the fire, and then you bring the food from the earth, and then there's all these different elements that are involved in creating this, and this can reflect on every aspect of life, I think. But I also have noticed that like whether you're like into astrology or energy or you're just like experiencing your own life the way you do, sometimes there's honestly, I feel this this like connection to just understanding that like what we're doing is also that macro kind of connection, but also realizing that like I know a lot of my friends and probably respectively everyone in your lives as well, and everyone who's in the Zoom call and who are assisting, is like all of us have kind of gone through these huge transformations, like where something has like, we've decided to change our path in our life, where we connected with something that we didn't realize was there, or whatever the case was. So there's always this constant like motion, but in those times of rest, like we can actually really digest all this stuff. And like we were talking about before, I think Donna brought that aspect of like when you're digesting, you're not just like, like pooping out all the stuff that like you were eating. You just a separation from things that you need and the things that you don't need, right? So like I love those ideas and how that relates, how this 5 elements and how Chinese medicine and these ancient practices of medicine can apply to like every part of life.
We also have another question from the Zoom chat from Irv, actually. The practices / ideas you describe seem almost religious. How do you feel about that association?
I'll start, just because, first I just heard, and I won't say who. And I think this is important, so this is important, I think. What do we mean by religious, right? Like, I don't know, like, is that a good thing, is it a bad thing? Is the what's the association? So within religious practice, and I think this is across all types of religious practice, there's ritual, right? And this article actually speaks to ritual practice. And where does ritual fit in for all of us? I mean, ritual can be, within religious practice, within there being deities or gods or spirits that we have to appease. Early forms of medicine, in fact, actually thought the people that were responsible for us being sick and ill were ancestors that were mad at us. Right? Remember that scene in Mulan Disney where they called it ancestor spirits about it's because you didn't do this, so that's why bad things are happening to you, right? So literally in the oracle bones of the Chiang dynasty, the record keeping of asking from the divine, like, why is so sick, or what do we do about it? The reported answers that the shamans would interpret were because you've got to take care of your ancestors. Somebody's unhappy with you. And these are the spirits that actually intermediate, between heaven and the gods and you. So your fortune is rooted in your ancestry, right? So this is the way early man, or the ancients really began organizing their understanding. So ritual practices include those ideas of how we continue to take care of these people that we are in relationship with and have connection to, right? Because we take care of them, we have these filial piety, we take care of our parents in whatever way we can, in this modern world, but we also take care of those who came before us. And that was an offering, right? Ritual, wine, food, prayer. So I guess the ritual, and whenever anything is ritualized, it is routine, and it's part of something that we do on a regular basis. And it's something where we acknowledge something outside of ourselves, outside of our own control and power. So yeah, I guess it has that aspect. I don't know if it's religious and how do I feel about it. I guess I'll frame it this way. For me, I think we always struggle between being independent and dependent, right? And it's literally the legacy of our becoming. Because when we are in the womb, there's no separation between us and our mother. Right? And then we're put out there in the world, and then we're separated, but we don't have consciousness of being separated yet, until a need doesn't get met, or we're hungry, or we poop, and now it's something I feel, and it's not something that's being limited by this giant, tube that's connecting me to mom, and we got to figure something else out. So I think that we're always working through, like, wanting to be independent, and then wanting to maybe to be connected. And we've had the experience here just now, and then in every other conversation we've had, each of us come in with an idea. That's a good idea, but it gets better in the sharing, right? It gets better in the building. Someone asked me what I was doing today, and I said, I don't know, some performance art. I don't know. I don't know what that's all about, but that's what that's about. Right? Yeah. And so the ritual nature, back to your question, I don't know, as long as we get this sort of transformation, right? The ritual isn't just about repetitive motion to do the same, but it's ultimately to bring some change. Right? Changing consciousness, changing something.
I think, I think Donna mentioned a really good point of, like also the reason why I brought the text in with the group. This was Jess and Donna's professional background. Like we're really uncertain, but then at the same time I was searching, is there anything that could bring a practitioner, writer, and artist all together in a group on the conversation, and this is how I discovered Juyo. And I think a big part of me reading the text is Juyo isn't about the doctor and the patient's relationship. It's it's also about family conversations, activities, and behaviors we do. And to me, that applies to community healing together. You like talk together or do something together, and then your energy passes through, conversation happens. And that is the ritual part of this healing process. And then also a lot of scholars are having the same, they compare to your text with their therapist or psychoanalyst. So it's about, like finding the root of this disordered emotion and then using different methods to, open it up, unblock it. And it involves with art and conversations and activities we do. So I think I felt like it's really important that we all join together in this group and then share this experience together and share different methods. And that's all part of the ritual. And I found it really interesting because, before the event, we had a conversation about call it as a performance or call it as a practice or call it as an event. And Donna and Jess has really strongly or like very sensitive using the performance this term. I kind of want to know why and how you think about that part, like in relation to because you're both practitioner and way 3, like we really think this is part of something we're figuring out together, and that's what we consider as performance because we're presenting a process. And then, but then you two are like, especially Donna as an educator, like she's very conscious about
Words, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's really more my consciousness and self-consciousness around performance. I think and then that's where it came up, and I was sort of like shedding that with the group together before we started, so I wasn't spazzing out. But yeah, it's the idea of performing. It's the idea of like being on spot and whatever I've decided from probably when I was 4 what performance meant. By the way, I'll just say that I wanted to learn how to play the piano when I was little, and I wanted to learn like dance. But once I found out that there was a recital that I would have to perform, I quit. Right, so this goes back way a long time ago. This is not about you guys.
See, this is therapy. We're figuring out wounds.
So no, but I love what you just said, and what you talked about. This was a performance about a process, and that's ultimately what I hooked up to, even from our very first conversation, just you and me, and then with the group. That this is what I love most is process and conversation. These two things for me in the modern age is something that is deeply in my work, that is in my teaching, and collaborating with my students in my work with patients and collaborating in their care. But it's really that ritual, and it's not empty ritual. It's really stuff that's really rich and in conversation to bring about a process and change, because let's face it, healing is about change, the right change, right? And we're all in the need for healing and connection, and imagining different ways of doing it is why I said, why not? Yes, I'll do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to have everyone. And I also have another thing for you. When we're coordinating our colors today, when you got into this issue, you want to tell us?
Issue about which element I am?
Yeah.
Because we sent around a quiz of like a personality test to test what element you are, and like at first Jess said that she felt like we were all water, right?
Or that everyone like has the element of water, but I think it's more that people can have more than just one element.
And I wasn't really sure how I identified. And also I was kind of very undecided and sort of an omnivore of elements. So I kind of picked clothing. We were supposed to pick clothing based on what color elements we represented, and I just went with all the colors because I always dress in very colorful clothes. So I felt like that was how I felt was best expressed myself in the core, and I don't feel particularly identify with one area. And then I thought maybe maybe through this performance, I would be able to understand which element I could be.
Do you have better understanding now?
Well, I kind of approached this performance as from a layman's perspective. I wanted to present the aspect of what somebody as an audience would be, how they would be experiencing this. I learned all these exercises with all of you, and so I think that like we're always in a transformational process of understanding ourselves more. To what Donna was talking about, performance is not just the fear of being on the spotlight is something that I also greatly identify with from a young age. But in this context, I feel like this is if we recontextualize performance to be about internalizing the learning of what we get out of this shared experience together, then it is the process of embodying what we learn and then performing as a way of like really embodying and processing and digesting to really demonstrate. And I think it links back to your background as an educator. And I think that that's like really a good, more productive way of thinking about this, how this is a performance. I always felt like it was important to consider this as a performance because we are an art space, and that we're all learning ways, practices of self-healing, and we want people to join in from virtually over Zoom to also be able to learn along with us these processes that we can all benefit from, but we're not necessarily like healing everyone's specific key issues. That's like more for like a therapy, let's like an individual one-on-one therapy with a licensed professional, and we're here just like finding ways to learn these ancient techniques that we can all really benefit from in our collective space and time that we're experiencing. And so I feel like to that, the performance is for us to all learn from one another and to really embody and together with the audience to be able to embody these spirits and bring that throughout all elements of our lives. And I think that's very much what we do at Special and how I identify with with Donna and Jess and Banyi and Lu and everyone who works with us. And so I think this is most beneficial.
From the when you experiencer's point of view. I actually also have a question for Jess. You know, like this also ties to performance and methods because Jess, you know, like actually interesting how Jess is practicing both tattooing and acupuncture together. And I, you know, at some level I see the connections and you also speak about it. But then for today's event, I asked you if you could do some demonstration with it and then draw connections. And you were saying something about, you know, it's a process. Right now you're in the process and you're trying to present in that way. And I'm curious to hear.
Well, so first, I'm a Chinese medicine student, so I'm not a practitioner yet. But
in the process.
In the process. And also, I think we were also talking about.
Oh yeah, I asked
tattooing.
you. Yeah.
Because Banyi thankfully received a tattoo from me, but we were initially talking about maybe doing that as part of the performance, which, you know, I think when it comes down to it, in terms of that ritual itself, like, I really believe that there is a certain, and to clarify, I'm also still like navigating this and it's still very new to me, so I'm trying to understand how all of those things relate to one another and how to be respectful of it. But usually, since like for me, I think ritual is very intentional, and sometimes when there's other like people or other energies around, like it can influence a lot of things. Like that idea of the unseen, you know, what's going on in those realms and those dimensions that we don't really have access to in this form. So I feel like on a practical level, there's a part where I'm just now starting to understand like the merging of historically what tattooing and acupuncture can do together. But at the same time, there's also this idea of, you know, the potentially like the cutaneous levels, which is the skin, the areas of the body that we know are used for defensive purposes. The tattoo can actually help heal the body through those methods, but there's also a lot of indigenous groups that still practice tattoo acupuncture to this day. But it is quite an ancient practice, and I think like being someone who's not of indigeneity, and also someone who's very new to Taoism, to Chinese medicine, and even tattooing for that matter, I'm still just in the very like, you know, in utero stages. I'm just kind of forming right now, trying to understand how they all connect. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I also wanted to bring the event to the end, maybe pass to Banyi. I didn't have a question for you.
So I'm just like supposed to talk.
How you feel?
I feel. Well, actually, you know, like I think when you were talking about like before, you were talking about like, you know, this being kind of a huge transformation moment. Like, you know, like I really resonated, you know, like and I think it, you know, like it happens to people at different points. You know, like, you know, like this, as the pandemic has brought out, like we, you know, have had time to like kind of, you know, to maybe like go inwards, you know, as we say in the exhibition statement too, you know, like this time, like, you know, when there's like a lot of external turmoil, a lot of things going on, you know, like this is an occasion to really explore like the self, but like, you know, not in the I think the transformational moment for me was like kind of to steer away from like, you know, like from like individualism and to really trying to find like connectivity like with others. And I think this event was, you know, such a great experience for me, you know, to be a part of it, to kind of, you know, to learn about your processes, you know, and kind of and also like connecting to, you know, as you say, like ancestors, you know, to kind of heal from like, you know, trauma that's like being passed from generation to generation. That's why like I'm also interested in ghosts, you know, spirits. You know, it's interesting because like, you know, when you were talking about like food, you know, like having kind of, you know, being aware of like where food comes from, you know, being connected to all of those, you know, organic phases. You know, I was thinking like, you know, like if we can be also connected to like, you know, spirits of our ancestors, you know, all of these practices, you know, kind of, yeah, and what that would look like. So, and you know, for me especially as, you know, Han Chinese, you know, like kind of, I'm like trying to imagine what that would look like if the, you know, Cultural Revolution did not happen. You know, we were like more in touch, you know, with, you know, tradition. Yeah, so like, you know, I think part of this is, you know, kind of our attempt to, you know, to bridge that, respond to that.
And any last one? Okay, so thank you everybody to stay with us, and special thanks to special team, the camera turn around, Danny and everybody. They're moderating the whole. Yeah, and thanks everybody for joining today.
Great. And we hope this is only the beginning of your practice.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.